Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Looks like we've got a little bit of a smaller crowd tonight, so hopefully some people will be joining us as we go along. But we'll get started, you guys are as important as a whole class. So, and what we're looking at right now is the end of the 6th chapter. I think we should be able to finish this chapter this week. It's a bit of a stretch, but we'll see. The verses kind of flow pretty well, so hopefully we'll be able to see that. Before I begin, I just wanted to publicly apologize for last week. Again, I'm sorry. Unforeseen events caused me to not end up being able. I wasn't able to be here, and what I'm most embarrassed about is not letting you guys know beforehand. So that is a mistake on my part, and sorry about that. So, but as it is, we're picking up this week. Again, we are in the 6th chapter. Before we get started, let me just drop the link into the chat over here, like we always do. Put that in the chat there. Okay, that's our link to our website page. If you would like to catch up on any previous classes or review anything, it should all be there. So that's what that's that. All right, let us get started, and let me jump into the screen share. Here's the button. Give me 1 second here. Sorry. All right, we're going to get started with the screen share. Keep on pressing the wrong button on my screen. Okay. There we go. That is our screen. And I'm actually going to go back to the last verse of last week, or I guess it's 2 weeks ago, because looking at the verses again in preparation for this week's class, I believe it's the beginning of a smaller kind of mini concept. And it really only stretches here from verse 7, that's again chapter 6, verse 7, to the end of the chapter. Kind of a smaller idea, but I think it's really key. And particularly in this larger discussion of how to access happiness, I think it's a big one because I think it's, even without Kohelet telling us this, I think it's a key to happiness, and it's great to see him address it like this. And all right, well, we'll get started. Okay, without any further ado, let's get started with chapter 6, verse 7. That's Pasuk Zion over here. And again, we did touch on this last session, but we'll pick it up again tonight. Sorry, I have a little something in my throat there. Kol amal ha'adam lafihu. All of the hard work that a person does is for their own mouth. V'gam hanefesh lo timale. And also the soul, the spirit, does not get filled. All right, so again, kol amal ha'adam lafihu. All of the hard work that a person does is for their own mouth. V'gam hanefesh lo timale, and also the spirit does not get filled. Okay, and I think what we have over here is he's starting to introduce a concept that he's going to flesh out in the coming verses, and that's the concept of trying to fit in with the people around you, and by contrast, being self-sufficient. So we all we live in a society, we live in a world that surrounds us, and it judges us, or we judge it. In any way, in some way or another, we have to contend with the world around us. So I think what he's going to be discussing over here, bringing up over here, is how we relate with the world around outside us, particularly in regards to, again, this larger goal of achieving happiness. And he's saying over here that all of the hard work that a person does at the end of the day is lefihu, is for themselves. Okay, lefihu is interesting. It's the shoresh over there would be peh, hey. Hey is one of those letters that is interchangeable, which would be in the mouth. Lefihu is kind of a let me put it like this. If you were to say, he could have said lepiv. All the hard work person does is for his mouth, right? His being the possessive masculine just being the dominant tense in Hebrew, or a gender used in Hebrew for any person. But in this case, he emphasizes it with lefihu, in his mouth, or in that person's mouth. All of the hard work the person does is for that person's mouth. It's kind of an emphasized thing. We're trying to say it's not just for their own mouth, it's for their own mouth. So if I could put it like that. So in that sense, is kind of what he's saying is that all the hard work that you do, in the end of the day, you're the one who reaps the benefits from it. You're the one who has to contend with it, who has to deal with it. And so in that sense, your happiness is going to be dependent on yourself. It's your soul, your spirit. Again, spirit really more than soul. Nefesh is the life force that a person has. So a person's life force, it's up to you to fulfill it, and nobody else, right? So it does not easily, I would put it, the spirit, the life force does not easily get satisfied. So all the hard work that a person does is for their own mouth. And so we're going to be seeing how that relates to the world around outside us. Okay. Again, we already touched on this verse, so I'm going to move ahead with the next verse. That's verse number 8. And continuing this theme, he says like this, and I'm going to admit this is a difficult passage, not difficult to translate, but difficult to kind of break up properly. And he says like this, key, because, so that already tells you that we're relating to this previous verse. There's a key, which means because, in most cases. Ma yoter lechacham min hakasil. What is there greater for the wise person than the fool? Ma le'ani yodea. What the poor person knows, lahaloch neged hachayim, to walk in the face of life, or with life. That word neged could have multiple meanings. Okay, so again, let's take that piece by piece. Does not in English, the syntax is off, so it's worth noting that. But he says, Ki ma yoter lechacham min haksil, because what is the greatness? What greater advantage does the wise person have over the fool? Ma le'ani yodea. What is the poor person to know, or what does the poor person know? Lahaloch neged hachayim, to walk in the face of life. Okay, so there's kind of a simpler understanding over here that King Solomon is giving us a contrast. He's like he often does. He's giving us contrasts. So, well, how much greater is a wise person than a fool? In that sense, that would, if we were to go with kind of the world's first view of Kohelet, of the book of Ecclesiastes, being that which is it being a depressing book. So he's saying, well, what good is it to be smart anyway, right? How much greater is it to be smarter than to be foolish? What greatness is there for a wise person over a fool? Comma or semicolon. And what does the poor person know to walk in the ways of life, or to walk versus life? Again, that's a very strange verse set. I guess the sentence structure there is very strange. Not just is it strange, but there's some words here that could have multiple meanings. So let's take this word neged over here. Neged commonly means that it's opposing. Okay, so for example, we say that when God made Eve from Adam, we say that God made her Ezer Kenegdo, a helper who is also opposing, or a helper opposite the man. So there's kind of this multiple meanings over here of the word neged, whether it means opposite or opposing, or actually, what's the word I'm looking for? It's kind of together with. There's another way of neged. In fact, a lot of the commentaries over here understand the word neged meaning to walk with life, or to walk in the ways of life. Even though neged commonly means opposing, here it would actually mean to walk in the ways of life. All right, so that's how a lot of the commentaries explain it. So we have this poor person who knows, or maybe we're saying that the poor person doesn't know, just like the wise person is no greater than the fool. So too, what does the poor person know to walk in the ways of life? Right, that what can be rhetorical, it can be an actual inquisitive statement. Male ani yodea. What does the poor person know to walk in the ways of life? Or it could be, again, a rhetorical question, but I guess it's not really rhetorical, but it could be saying that which the poor person knows to walk in the ways of life. So there's so many ways we could direct this verse over here. It seems to go multiple directions. And again, I would say that simple understanding is that we're giving a contrast. So a wise person is really no greater than a fool, and a poor person, what do they know about walking in life? All right, so that would be kind of, I guess, the simple understanding. Not a very uplifting verse. I don't even know what you would get from that verse if you just read it like that. I personally found a lot of I liked what the Mitsuda says. We mentioned Mitsuda multiple times. Mitsuda is the Mitsudat Sion and Mitsudat David. He wrote two commentaries, but he was a commentary on much of the Tanakh, and he writes that what we're at is actually a question and answer. It says, what makes a wise person greater than a fool? What makes the wise person greater than a fool? What makes a wise person better or greater than a fool? That which that person helps the poor person to know, to walk in the ways of life. So a smart person, a wise person, knows how to reach out to another person, to bring them into the ways of life. And that's kind of the way he goes with understanding over here is that what makes a wise person wise as opposed to a foolish person foolish is that the wise person knows how to reach beyond themselves and to bring people in to walk in the ways of life. And so one of the things that King Solomon is pointing out to us is this idea of learning, or let me take a step back. When we have this wise person who's helping the poor person, we don't necessarily have to understand it as being that the poor person is somebody outside of the wise person. It means to say we've got King Solomon is telling us what makes a smart person better than a fool. That which what makes the smart person greater than a fool is the fact that the smart person knows how to take a life of poverty and to still with that to walk in the ways of life. Okay, meaning to say that we would typically understand if somebody's a poor person, if somebody does not have the things that they need to live through their life, if they are sufferers, I'll put suffering aside for now, but if they don't have the means that they need to live their best life, so they're stuck. What are they going to do? They're stuck with their particular situation, their particular station in life. But what King Solomon seems to tell us is that there is actually the wise person has a greater ability than your fool. Your fool just says, I'm poor. I'm poor. That's my lot in life. Kind of your tevias, right? It just, I'm poor if I were a rich man. As opposed to a chacham, a wise person gets to say, okay, I'm poor. I'm monetarily poor, but it's up to me to figure out how to walk in the ways of the life of life, how to go in and continue to live my life, not just in the sense like we've talked about a lot in the book so far of that, where, how do I live my best life even with my predicaments? How do I adapt to my situation? But I think it's more than that. I think what we're actually bringing up over here, and that's kind of where this neged takes on both of its meanings at the same time, whether it's walking in the ways of life or kind of opposing life, is that you have a poor person who's able to play off or give off the impression that they're okay, that they're doing all right. Not just give off the impression, but to live a good life, to live a normal life, even though they don't have the means and the abilities that other people have. So a wise person is somebody who looks at their situation and says, okay, I am lacking some basics that other people have. And I'm not as, to use a pretty heavy word from nowadays, I'm not as privileged as other people. And that person doesn't say, okay, well, I'm not as privileged, therefore, what am I going to do? I'm never going to be able to step out of my, I'm never going to be able to rise from my predicament. No, the wise person says, no, I know how to do, I know how to deal with this. So I'm not as privileged as somebody else in this area. I don't have enough money, or I don't have, whatever the thing is, what's holding them down, whatever that thing is, the wise person is able to say, no, I could live a normal life. I could make my way in this world, and particularly in the society around myself. I can make my way in society even without that. That's what makes a wise person wise and a foolish person foolish. We've talked before about this. Kasil is kind of the impression that you get from the word kasil. The simple explanation is that it's a fool. But kesel is also, it's kind of layers of fat. We talk about layers of fat on the kidneys. Kesel, chilav al kesalim. That's a phrase that we have in the Torah a number of occasions. So it's kind of somebody who's stuffed up, can't hear what's going on around them. Their ears are stuffed. They don't want to, so somebody who's stuck, who sticks themselves and keeps themselves down in a situation because, I'm not as privileged as somebody else. How am I going to make it in this world? That person is, that's the foolish talk. As opposed to the wise person's talk, the wise person says, no, I'm an ani, I'm a poor person, but still I'm yodea lahaloch neged hachayim. I know how to walk both in life and opposing life. There's a world around me. I can break barriers. I could, shatter glass ceilings, as we like to say nowadays, right? So there I have that ability. And so that's what differentiates between a wise person and a foolish person. So let's take the verse one more time. He says, what makes a smart person, what makes a wise person greater than a fool? I'll tell you what makes a wise person greater than a fool. Mala ani yodea, that which a poor person or somebody who's not as privileged is able to know, lahaloch neged achayim, to walk in the face of life or to walk in the ways of life. Right. So again, that idea being that a wise person is able to go and say, I'm not going to get stuck in my lack of privilege. I'm going to move ahead and do what I can with the world that I'm given, with the package that I have. So I think that's really what he's bringing up over here is that. Let me put that aside. One of the other things that you start to notice over here is him talking about walking in the ways of life. And I kind of perceive that as being the ability to, so to speak, walk the walk, to find your place in a greater society, the world around us. And that's an important piece of life. We all crave, I would say, knowing the ability to blend into the world around us. And it is the nature of a wise person to say, okay, if by my natural means, my natural abilities, I don't necessarily blend in the world around me, I come up with ways to do it. I come up with a way to do so, to become one of the gang, even though I don't have what everybody else has. So if you take the poor person, the example that he has, the actual poor person, it's the pauper who is able to go and, either, as I put it originally, he's able to play off, put on airs that, I'm fine, I'm okay. So that's a simple way of it. But there's just, in general, we all try to blend in to some degree or another. So I think that's kind of what he's bringing up over here. And it's kind of funny because he's about to qualify in the next verse. So let's see the next verse. That way we can see where he qualifies that. Because as of right now, I would say he's kind of promoting blending into society. There's a society, you don't have what everybody else has. If you're smart, you'll figure out a way to blend it. That's one way of presenting that last verse. So verse number 8 was basically saying, there's a society around you. You want to figure out how to be part of society, even if you don't have everything everybody else has. There's a way to do it. You could do it. If you're smart enough, you'll do what you need to do, and you will find your place in the world around you. And he's about to qualify that here in verse number 9. Okay, so moving on to verse number 9. That's over here. And here he has one of our tovs, right? So we've had this a number of times throughout the book so far, that he starts a verse with the word tov. Tov meaning good, right? So what we've done so far is we've said that every tov is kind of the boiling down of a lesson. And now he's about to give you the short version of the lesson. We're going to see in the coming chapter, he's going to do it. He's going to give us like 5 tovs in a row. He's going to have a whole bunch. There will be a qualifiable difference between this chapter or all the chapters thus far and the following chapters. We're going to come to a natural break in the order at the end of this chapter. We'll talk about that a little more, maybe at the end or maybe next week. But here we have again another tov. He's going to tell us what's good. You want to know what's good? Meaning where are you going to find happiness? So he tells us a big secret over here. Tov marei einayim mehalach nafesh. It is good. What is good? The vision of your eyes from how you walk, from the walking of the spirit. Gam zehevel utruach, and then he throws in one of our old phrases. This is hevel. This is this usually translated as futility, but really we understand it as being something that's for the most part useless unless you really know how to get something out of it. Where utruach, which we said is its spirit breaking. So it's interesting over here to call something both good and hevel utruach. Not a common combination in the book of Kohelet. This is the first time I've seen it. It could be it's the only time I would have to do another search through the book that we ever find this. But we have an interesting thing where he's telling us that something is on one hand good, and on the other hand is spirit breaking, is futile, or however we want to try. It's steam, right? That we talked about. So that's uncommon and a very strange thing for Kohelet to do. So and everybody tries to contend with this. We have some of the commentaries who say that what is it that you should do with your life? You should what's goodness is to look beyond this world, figure out what's supposed to how you're going to make your way into the next world, right? So this world, whatever this world is, what it is, but you want to figure out how to get into the next world. So that's goodness. Goodness is figuring out what's going to get you into the next world. But at the same time, if you live your life only looking for the reward, that's also not good, because we're not supposed to serve God for reward. We serve God because we love God, because he asks us to, not for the reward. There is reward, but we don't do it for that reason. That's how a lot of the commentaries take it. The Mitsuda that we mentioned earlier, that's how he explains it. I have a hard time with that explanation, just because that, first and foremost, it doesn't seem to fit into the series of verses. We try to make sure that the verses really kind of flow with each other. So he's trying to tell us something built on the last thing. And more than that, he's bringing up the same concept of halach, of walking, right? So he said that the poor person who's smart will know how to walk with everybody else, who will walk the walk, as we say. And I think that's kind of what he's actually really trying to say over here. I'm going to read it a little differently than how I read it the first time. Tov marei einayim. What's good is to look with your eyes. My halach nefesh, as opposed to walking with the spirit, as he puts it. Gam zeh hevel ruach. Walking the walk with other people, that's hevel ruach. That's mostly futile and spirit breaking. So we'll have to dissect that a little bit. But what we have over here is him saying that we just built up this whole thing. A wise person will look at their disadvantages and say, okay, I'm going to figure out how to survive in this world anyway. I'm going to make my way in this world anyway. So, okay, that's a great thing. We said that's wisdom over there. But he says, you know what? That trying to fit in like that, looking at the society around you and just trying to fit in, that is, there's a purpose to it. It's not futile. It's not totally futile, but it's our hevel. You're going to have a hard time really pulling out the goodness from it. And more than that is it's utruach. It's spirit breaking. When a person tries in the face of adversity to fit in with everybody else, that is spirit breaking, because they're just going to keep on running and get up against the wall. It's possible. We said a wise person would know how to do it, but it is spirit breaking. So what's better for a person than that? What's a better way to live your life than to constantly try to fit in? If you look with your eyes, and my understanding of that is he's saying that there's a difference between somebody who is sufficient. Yes, they have disadvantages. Yes, they're not as a privilege as somebody else. But yeah, and there's an advantage to that person figuring out how to blend into society. They've done it. They've reached a point in their life they're sufficient because they've become accepted by society. But really, you want to do something else, because being accepted by society, that's enough. That's okay, but it's painful. And in the end of the day, you're not self-sufficient. What would be better? Better is self-sufficiency, is when you look with your eyes. The way I kind of imagine that is somebody who blends into everybody else around them. Yeah, they do. They walk the walk. They do whatever everybody else is doing, but they're living a whole nother life in their head. And they look at the world around them, and they're able to spot where there's issues with the world around them. They don't just blend into society and say, this is what society does. I'm happy with that. I've chosen to just, I'm happy with blending in. I don't stand out. I'm good to go. No, there's something more than that. If you continue to live with a discerning eye, even with that, then that's better. So a person can again, the way I kind of perceive this is you've got somebody who on the outside is perfectly normal. We're not talking about somebody who's not normal. We're talking about somebody who follows the social norms, the societal norms, but at the same time continues to have a discerning eye. Marei einai, as that person has a vision of their eyes. Their eyes continue to look. So I think that's what he's saying over here is Tov marei einayim mehalach nefesh. More important than walking the walk is to have that discerning eye that entire time. Gamze hevel ruach, because just walking the walk, that will break you eventually. If you don't really fit and you force yourself to fit, it's going to break you eventually. It's going to be very difficult. But what you need to learn how to do is to become self-sufficient, how to move beyond the societal expectations and make your own expectations of yourself. And that's marei einayim. That's goodness. That's tov. That's kind of how I understand this verse over here. So in the flow of the verses, he's saying, and he introduced this whole thing with saying, all the work you're going to do in your life, you're the one who's going to enjoy it. So let's look at the society around you. You may not have everything everybody else has, but if you're smart, you'll figure out how to blend in at the very least. But blending in is not really enough. Blending in will only get you so far, and it may cause you a lot of pain to do that, to just blend into society. But if you want to find goodness, and particularly if you want to find happiness, right? That's kind of our supreme goal over here. If you want to find happiness, what you need to do is figure out how to be self-sufficient. So while you're living amongst everybody else, to keep your eyes open and to see, what do I appreciate over here? What do I think is questionable? What do I think is wrong? And he's going to say an interesting thing about that in the coming verse. But what he is saying over here, that again, that is how I understand what he's saying. He's saying that it's important for a person, not a wise person will know how to blend in, but you want to find happiness. Wisdom does not necessarily equal happiness, right? If you want to find happiness beyond that, you also have to figure out how to keep your eyes open, how to look at the world around you with a discerning eye, and not just accept things for the way that they are. Can you change them? Not necessarily, but you will at least you will be self-sufficient. You will have the sufficiency to live in your own, to maintain your own reality, I would say. So to explain that a little bit more, he moves on to verse 10 over here. And in verse 10, it's a bit of a longer verse. Let's take a second over here. He says like this: Ma shehaya, that which is, kivar nikra shemo, its name has already been called. V'noda asher hu adam, and it is known that is the person. Strange verse set up as usual. V'lo yuchal ladin, and is not able to contend, literally to judge, im shetakif mimenu, with that which is stronger than the person. Okay, strange sentence structure, as we often have, right? He writes poetically, so he waxes poetic, I would say. So he definitely worth noting that the sentence structure does not flow very well. But let's take it piece by piece again. Mashahaya, that which is, shehaya is current present tense. Kivar nikra shemo, its name is already called. Okay, and kivar means already. V'noda asher hu adam, and it is known, or makes it known, that this is a person, this is a human being. V'lo yuchal ladin, and it is not able to judge, to fight, to contend, im shetakif mimenu, with that which is stronger than him, than the person. Okay, so again, strange sentence structure. The Chazal, the sages, they take a number of interesting takes on this. They say that you have the strongest people ever, some of the greatest people ever, and they always have something that humanizes, that humbles them, right? Even Moses, at the end of the day, he doesn't get led into the land of Israel because he hits the rock. And even Abraham, and the sages bring a number of examples that you are reminded that somebody who is, we would think is like Superman. At the end of the day, there's always a kryptonite. There's always something that humbles the person. So that's kind of an allegorical take on it. It definitely doesn't fit in the flow of the verses, but that's how the sages take this verse over here. They say That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a person who is, you have somebody. There's always something to make the person appear to be human. It humanizes the person. Okay, even the strongest heroes. That's again one take on it. That's the sage's take on it. But I think there's something more that does flow out of the flow of the verses over here that we're talking that will illuminate what we're saying even more. And he's saying like this: that which is, right? So let's take a look at the society around us. There is a social fabric. There's a social norm, a set of social norms. There's things that govern our lives around us. So that which is kivar nikra shemo is already called by its name, meaning to say that there are societal norms. There's again a social fabric around us. If any individual one of us decides we want to change it, I just don't think it's right that we can't speed. When we're driving cars, I just don't think it's right. The society wants safety. I don't think safety is a priority. Let's just go with that. Okay, so you can't change that by yourself. There are certain things that are just the way society is. It's the name is already called, right? And the truth is, it applies even to more mundane things, fashion, right? No single one of us can just stand up one day and decide fashion. We're changing the fashion. Okay, somebody perhaps can, maybe a group of people can, maybe a society can, but for us to just get up one day and say no, we're changing the fashion, doesn't exactly work. I always like to point out that even your greatest iconoclast, your greatest, your punk rocker dresses like a punk rocker. They're dressing like somebody. They're blending into some group. So in that sense, we have this idea that society, the social norms, the social fabric, is not decided by individuals, not decided by us. So you look at the world around you. We're talking about the person who's self-sufficient. They've got their eyes open. You want to change something in society, you can't necessarily do that. V'noda asher hu adam. That's what lets you know that you're a person, that you're human. It kind of that's what humanizes the person. And kind of another take on that is v'noda asher hu adam. I had another kind of way of explaining that what it means is that's how you know and helps guide you to know that you're part of Adam. Adam, in this case, not meaning a human, but you're part of the human race. You're part of society. There are certain social things, social norms that govern society, and due to the fact that you can't change them, it's kind of a chesed. It's a kindness to us that helps us regulate ourselves. You don't want to go off the deep end. So why are those things there? And then the day they're there because they help us. They do guide us. There's a society around us. It says we wear our outerwear is outerwear and our underwear is underwear, right? That's an important thing. If you just wake up one day and say, I want to switch it, that's going to show you that you've gone off a deep end. You're no longer part of the Adam. Again, the throughout Tanakh, we have this, throughout the books of the Bible, we have this idea that Adam sometimes refers to an individual human or a person, but there are times when it just refers to humanity, the whole of humanity. So again, two ways of kind of looking at this verse over here, this beginning of this verse over here, that says that the social fabric that's there, it's decided, it's not decided by you. You can't go and change that. Either that should be a humanizing thing, that should humble you a little bit, or that's what helps you realize that that's what helps you guide yourself from not going off the deep end. So total self-sufficient person, doesn't care anything about what anybody else says. There's a way to rein yourself in at the same time. I kind of like that explanation. It's my own, but I like it because it really fits with what we're talking about. We're walking this line between, I want to remain part of society. I want to blend into a certain degree, but I also want to be self-sufficient. So I want to be one of the gang, but I don't want to lose myself at the same time. So that's what this wise person and this happy person is going to be struggling with throughout their entire life. And that's just the reality of life. If you're smart, you'll blend in. If you're happy, you'll be self-sufficient. So if you want to be both, then you gotta figure out how to walk that line. that's why this beginning of this verse is great over here. It says there's styles, there's a social norm, there are social norms. You can't change them, and they help you figure out when you've gone too far, when you've gone off the deep end. And as he puts it over here, lo yuchal dinim shetakif mimenu. You find that there are things that you can't fight with, you can't contend with, you can't go up against. Just there's a norm. You can't fight against the norm. Again, this is a kind of a hard thing to. I wouldn't say it's a hard thing. It's an interesting thing to think about in our own world, where we do dissent. We kind of look at dissent and questioning things around us as being a good thing. Torah does it, and American society does it, and we in general we want to question things. We want to question things around us, but at the same time, we want to do it in a way that we don't leave the norm. We don't become, go off the grid, so to speak. So it's good for a person to realize that there are things that they can't fight with, they can't contend with. You look around, you have your eyes open, you blend into society, you have your eyes open, you say, there's just things here that I just don't think I would change those things. Okay, but if you want, you will find happiness in the fact that you're self-sufficient, and you will find wisdom in the fact that you blend in. But there's a certain thing to keeping that in your head, or knowing when to express it, I guess, is more like it. Knowing when to express your distaste in something, and realizing that there's not always not every place and time is the place and time to go on your crusade. So again, let's read the verse one more time. Masha hayak var nikra shemo. That which is the social fabric is that way because there are those who call it by its name. I mean, that's beyond you to necessarily figure out. And that lets you know that when you're part of Adam, when you're part of the general society, and you're not able to go and fight against that which is, I'm sorry, when you're not, that lets you know when you're not able to fight against that which is stronger than you. Okay, let me just take a look over here. I really want to finish the verses over here, particularly because the next one's really short and there's not much to say on it. So let's take a stab at it. I hope, please forgive me if it ends up being too much. Verse number 11. And he's just kind of fleshing out this point a little bit more. It says, there's a lot of things in this world that are just, they add more havel to the world. They add more steam to the world. Mayoter la adam. What benefit do they have? What do they make things greater for the person? Again, read one more time. There are many things that increase havel. So in other words, there's a lot of stupid things in this world. There's a lot of things that if you're living with your eyes open, and you blend into society, you've done what the smart person does, you're going to realize there's a lot of stupid things in this world. Just foolish things that don't make sense, or they're really kind of foolish. Mayoter la adam. What do they benefit you? Okay, that's if you're looking for happiness again, you're going to have that self-sufficiency where you say, I don't need that thing. Mayoter la adam. What does that help me? How does it improve my life? And you'll reject it. Again, walking that line between normal and self-sufficient. That's kind of our sweet spot. Not much to say on this verse. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Let me read it one more time. There are many things, marbim havel, that increase the futility, that increase the steam. Mayoter la adam. And what do they benefit? What do they make anything greater for a person? Okay, that rabbah, that's the same shoresh over there, the same root word over there. Harbe, there are many things that make many the havel. Right, they increase the havel. All right, so that's that shoresh over there. Rabbah, very common shoresh. We've probably seen it already over here. So again, that's what he's saying over here. There are in your quest to finding happiness, in your quest to blending into society, in your quest to self-sufficiency, you're going to find that there's plenty of things that you realize are foolish and silly, and you'll learn how to steer away from them. Let me just finish this off because it's worthwhile. Ki mi yodea, because who knows? Ma tov la'adam b'chayim. what is good for a person in their life, in life. Mispar yamei chaye hevlo, for the number of the days of the life of their hevel, of their futility. All right, again, I don't like futility as the word over there. V'yasem katzel, and makes them like shade. Asher mi yagid la'adam, what is going to tell the person? Mi hi'acharav tachat hashamash, that which will be after him under the sun. Okay. So he says again, who knows what is good for the person, b'chayim, in their life, mispar yemei chai hevlo, for the number of the days of the life of their esteemed lives, v'yasem katzel, to make them like shadow. Asher meyagid la'adam, who is going to tell the person ma yehia acharav tachat hashamesh, will be for them will be after them under the sun. Typical understanding, a lot of the commentaries go with the life of a person is like a shade, not like the shade of a tree. This is the wording of the sages, not like the shade of a tree, it's not like the shade of a building, not even like the shade of a cloud. It's like the shade of a bird flying in the sky. That's what life is, goes by in the blink of an eye. Okay, that's the simple understanding. I guess kind of the simple understanding. A person's life is very short. Who's going to tell you what's good about it? No one's there to tell you what's good about it. I think there's kind of another kind of hidden explanation over there. We keep on talking about tachat hashamesh, under the sun, physicality, right? So everything in the physical is under the sun. We've been trying to access happiness under the sun. Sometimes you have to take things out from under the sun. You have to put them in the shade. So the sun, under the sun being the physical world, who's there to tell you? Who's going to tell you how to take things out from under the sun and bring them to the shade? That's kind of like I don't know if it's necessarily a poetic understanding, but it's a different understanding over here, right? But the main focus of this verse over here is saying like this. In the end of the day, who is going to tell you how to live your life? Yes, there's a society that gives you guidelines to how to live life. There's all sorts of hints and rules that we get from the world around us that tell us the basics for living life. But who in the end of the day decides how to find happiness? Who in the end of the day shows you how to get everything you want out of this world? It's you, and it's in your head. He presents it as a rhetorical question. Who's going to tell you? Who's going to tell you how to live life? How to get good out of life? How to find goodness in life? Who's going to tell you how to leave over a legacy afterwards? No one's really going to tell you at the end of the day, because there's a society that we have to live in, but there's also, if you want to find happiness, our ultimate goal over here, if you want to find happiness, you have to look with your own eyes and shut down the noise that comes from you from outside. All those dvarim harbe, marbim havel that we had in the last verse, those many things that increase the steam. You have to open your own eyes and be self-sufficient. So nobody's going to tell you in the end of the day how to find happiness. He's given us, it's kind of like an interesting cap to this whole discussion. We've been discussing how to find happiness, and he's given us a lot of help. He's laid out a yellow brick road to find happiness. But in the end of the day, there's certain things that only you're going to be able to appreciate, and in particular in regards to the recent conversation of wealth. Wealth, we've said, wealth is what we've been talking about for the past chapter and a half. And what is it's interesting, because he's kind of saying, like, most of the world looks at wealth for happiness. It says, "Ooh, I want happiness. I must need wealth." Well, that's the society. That's the noise. That's the dvarim harbe marbim havel. That's the many things increasing the steam. That's what you're hearing over there. You want to find happiness? Sure, live in the world, but if you're smart, you'll know how to make yourself even, capable without everything everybody else has. And if you're looking for happiness, you're going to keep your eyes open at the same time. So you're going to be able to fit in, and also to look beyond and say, there are things here that I don't think are right. So stop looking at wealth as your key to happiness. Look beyond that, and if you know what to do, you'll look beyond that, and you'll find happiness. You'll find your own ways towards happiness, and stop listening to what the world around you tells you to do, and start really thinking in your own mind. Nobody could. At the end of the day, who knows how to tell somebody how to make their lives happy? What is good in their lives? Who's able to tell you how to had to deal with everything under the sun. You're the one who's going to end up taking it from under the sun into the shade and to experiencing and enjoying that. I know we extended, we went a little over time. Please forgive me. I try not to do that, but there you go. So thank you all for joining us. And we will, God willing, pick up next week.